As night fell, Clara found herself back at her apartment, surrounded by files and documents she had meticulously collected over the years. Her dining table transformed into a war room, with stacks of papers organized chronologically and color-coded notes marking key dates and decisions. The termination letter sat prominently in the center, a constant reminder of what she was fighting against. She methodically reviewed every email chain, every meeting transcript, searching for patterns and inconsistencies in Marcus's behavior leading up to her dismissal. David's call came just as she was cross-reaching the company's succession planning documents with recent board meeting minutes. "Clara, I've been thinking about what happened today," he said, his voice grave. "There's something you need to know about Marcus's relationship with our biggest competitor." Her pen froze mid-note as she listened intently. For years, rumors had circulated about Marcus's close ties with executives from Sterling Corp, but she had always dismissed them as industry gossip. Now, David's insider information painted a different picture, one of strategic maneuvers and carefully timed betrayals. The pieces began falling into place as she connected David's revelations with the anomalies she had discovered in the financial projections. Certain initiatives had been deliberately underfunded in the months leading up to the merger talks, while resources were mysteriously redirected to projects that aligned suspiciously well with Sterling's emerging interests. The pattern was subtle but undeniable once revealed, a calculated dismantling of Caldwell's competitive edge in preparation for something bigger. Clara's phone buzzed again, this time with a series of screenshots from Rachel. They showed encrypted messages between Marcus and several board members, discussing contingency plans for executive realignment, coinciding perfectly with key phases of the merger negotiations. Her heart pounded as she realized the depth of the betrayal. This wasn't just about eliminating her, it was part of a larger scheme to position Caldwell Enterprises as an easy acquisition target. Methodically, Clara began building her case. She created a digital timeline, mapping out each suspicious event, each questionable decision, each carefully orchestrated coincidence. The conflict resolution clause became her anchor point, providing the legal framework she needed to challenge Marcus's actions. But more importantly, it offered a way to protect the deal itself, to ensure that the merger proceeded on terms that honor the hard work and dedication of everyone involved, rather than serving as a vehicle for corporate sabotage. As dawn broke through her apartment windows, Clara found herself staring at the comprehensive dossier she had assembled. The evidence was overwhelming, yet she knew presenting it would require careful strategy. Marcus had powerful allies and decades of experience maneuvering through corporate politics. To take him down, she would need to be smarter, faster, and more determined than ever before. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Clara's first move came disguised as surrender. She drafted a resignation acceptance letter, carefully worded to appear gracious while subtly referencing the conflict resolution clause. Through back channels, she ensured it reached every member of the board, planting the seed of doubt about Marcus's handling of the situation. Simultaneously, she activated a network of contacts cultivated over years in the industry, quietly gathering additional intelligence about Marcus's dealings with Sterling Corp. The media became her next battlefield. Under the guise of seeking career advice, she met with influential business journalists, casually dropping hints about irregularities in Caldwell's recent financial reports. The reporters, sensing a major story, began digging independently, their investigations gradually unearthing the discrepancies Clara had documented. Each published article added pressure, forcing Marcus to divert attention from his original plan and focus on damage control. Meanwhile, Clara worked tirelessly to secure her position as an indispensable player in the merger negotiations. Leveraging her extensive knowledge of the deal's intricacies, she began discreetly advising key stakeholders through intermediaries. Her insights proved invaluable, helping them navigate complex clauses and anticipate potential roadblocks, all while maintaining plausible deniability about her involvement. The irony wasn't lost on her. Marcus had tried to cut her out, yet her expertise became more crucial than ever to the deal's success. The counteroffensive gained momentum when Rachel unearthed a series of internal memos showing how Marcus had systematically marginalized other executives who questioned his strategy. These documents, combined with David's information about Sterling Corp., painted a damning picture of corporate malfeasance. Clara orchestrated a coordinated release of this information to select board members, timing it perfectly with a major shareholder meeting. The resulting chaos forced Marcus to scramble, his carefully constructed narrative unraveling under scrutiny. But Clara's most brilliant stroke came when she approached Michael with a radical proposal. Using his position in finance, they began implementing subtle adjustments to Caldwell's capital allocation, making it increasingly difficult for Marcus to execute his planned corporate restructuring. Each change was minor enough to avoid immediate detection, yet collectively they created significant obstacles to Marcus's agenda. The beauty of the strategy lay in its invisibility. To outsiders, it appeared as standard operational adjustments rather than deliberate sabotage. As weeks turned into months, Clara watched with satisfaction as Marcus's empire began to crumble from within. Board members who had once hung on his every word now questioned his judgment. Shareholders grew restless, demanding explanations for the mounting inconsistencies in company reports. Even his closest allies began distancing themselves, sensing the shifting tides of power. Yet through it all, Clara maintained her distance, pulling strings from the shadows while allowing Marcus to dig his own grave. The transformation was subtle yet profound. Clara's apartment, once a sanctuary of order and professionalism, evolved into a command center of strategic warfare. Maps of corporate relationships covered the walls, connected by red strings that formed complex webs of influence and corruption. Her laptop became a portal to multiple virtual identities, each carefully crafted to gather intelligence and plant misinformation. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford, replaced by endless cups of coffee and the relentless pursuit of justice. In the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The polished executive had given way to someone harder, more determined, with eyes that burned with purpose. Gone were the designer suits and carefully styled hair. In their place were practical clothing and a no-nonsense attitude. Every waking moment was devoted to dismantling the empire that had betrayed her, each victory fueling her resolve for the next battle. The glass doors of the sleek corporate office slid shut behind her with a soft hiss, but it might as well have been the slamming of a prison cell. The weight of betrayal pressed down on Clara's shoulders as she clutched the termination letter in her trembling hand. She had walked into this boardroom expecting to finalize the most significant deal of her career, a merger that would revolutionize their industry and cement her position as an invaluable asset to the company. Instead, she found herself face-to-face with Marcus Caldwell, the ruthless CEO who had personally mentored her for the past 3 years. His cold, calculating eyes bore into hers as he delivered the devastating news. Effective immediately, she was no longer employed by Caldwell Enterprises. The irony wasn't lost on her. They were sitting at the very conference table where she had spent countless nights perfecting every detail of this billion-dollar acquisition. Clara's mind raced back to just 24 hours ago when Marcus had praised her strategic brilliance during their pre-meeting. "You're going to blow them away tomorrow," he had said, his signature charismatic smile lighting up his face. Now that same smile twisted into something sinister as he explained how her departure was a necessary business decision. The words felt like daggers piercing through every ounce of trust she had placed in him. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket, messages from colleagues who had witnessed her humiliating exit flooding in. Some offered sympathy, others expressed shock, but most remained conspicuously silent. As she stepped into the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. The confident woman who had entered this building that morning seemed like a stranger now. Her usually impeccable blonde hair had escaped its professional bun, framing a face pale with disbelief and eyes red from fighting back tears. The ride down to the lobby felt interminable, each floor bringing new waves of reality crashing down upon her. She remembered the late nights spent perfecting presentations, the weekend sacrifice to meet impossible deadlines, the personal sacrifices made in pursuit of success within these very walls. And now, in one swift move, everything she had worked for was being stripped away without warning or explanation. As the elevator doors opened to the bustling lobby, Clara forced herself to maintain composure. The security guard stationed near the entrance gave her a sympathetic nod. Word traveled fast in corporate towers. With each step toward the revolving doors, she could feel the eyes of former colleagues watching from above, their silhouettes visible against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The crisp autumn air hit her face as she emerged onto the street, carrying with it the bitter realization that her life's work had just been reduced to a mere transactional decision. Her high heels clicked against the pavement as she wandered aimlessly through the financial district, the termination letter still clutched in her hand. The city around her continued its relentless pace, oblivious to her shattered world. Bankers in tailored suits rushed past, phones glued to their ears, while delivery workers navigated the crowded sidewalks with practiced efficiency. The normalcy of it all felt surreal, like watching a movie where everyone else knew their lines except her. Clara found herself drawn to a small park tucked between towering skyscrapers, a rare patch of green in the concrete jungle. She sank onto a bench beneath a maple tree whose leaves were just beginning to turn, their vibrant colors mocking her own sense of decay. Pulling out her phone, she scrolled through years of emails and documents, memories of victories and challenges flashing before her eyes. Each message thread told a story of dedication and growth, of battles fought and won alongside Marcus Caldwell himself. The injustice of it all burned hotter with each passing minute. She had been instrumental in transforming Caldwell Enterprises from a struggling mid-tier firm into an industry leader. The strategies she had developed, the connections she had cultivated, the risks she had taken, all dismissed in a single meeting. Her mind replayed the subtle signs she had ignored over the past months. Marcus's increasingly distant demeanor, the sudden exclusion from key meetings, the way he had started taking credit for ideas she had pioneered. What hurt most was the timing. This wasn't just any deal, it was their masterpiece, the culmination of years of planning and positioning. Every aspect of the acquisition strategy bore her fingerprints, from the initial market analysis to the intricate negotiation tactics. Marcus had orchestrated her dismissal precisely when she became expendable, leaving her without even the satisfaction of seeing her final project through to completion. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park, Clara's thoughts turned to those who had stood by her side throughout her journey. There was Rachel from legal, who had worked weekends to ensure every contract was airtight, Michael from finance, whose number crunching had saved them from countless pitfalls, and perhaps most importantly David, her mentor before Marcus, who had believed in her potential when she was just starting out. Their faces flashed in her mind, each representing a piece of the puzzle she had helped assemble. The realization struck her with sudden clarity. Caldwell Enterprises was built not just on Marcus's vision, but on the collective efforts of people like her who had poured their souls into its success. The company's values statement, which she had helped craft years ago, mocked her now: integrity, innovation, loyalty. Words meant nothing without action to support them, and Clara had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Her fingers trembled as she composed a text to Rachel. "Do you remember that clause we added to the partnership agreement last quarter?" It was a long shot, but if her memory served right, there was a provision buried deep in the fine print that could change everything. As she waited for a response, Clara's mind began piecing together fragments of conversations, meeting notes, and strategic plans. What had seemed like routine documentation at the time now took on new significance, each detail potentially holding the key to exposing Marcus's true intentions. Rachel's reply came quickly: "Yes, the conflict resolution clause? What about it?" Clara's heart raced as she realized she might have found her opening. The clause required full disclosure of any internal conflicts that could impact major deals, specifically mandating documentation of personnel changes during critical negotiations. Marcus had been so focused on cutting her loose that he might have overlooked this crucial requirement. With renewed determination, Clara called Michael. "I need access to the quarterly financial projections and the associated risk assessments," she explained, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Remember how we always documented potential risks to executive stability?" Michael hesitated only briefly before agreeing to help. They both knew what was at stake, not just Clara's reputation, but the integrity of the entire deal. Yet beneath the surface transformation lay deeper changes. The trust she had once placed in corporate structures had been replaced by a nuanced understanding of power dynamics. She learned to read between lines of official statements, to interpret the significance of seemingly casual remarks, to recognize the telltale signs of manipulation. Her network expanded beyond traditional business circles, encompassing investigative journalists, whistleblower attorneys, and financial analysts who shared her disillusionment with corporate ethics. The emotional toll manifested in unexpected ways. Nights were the hardest, when the adrenaline subsided and the weight of her choices settled heavily upon her. She found herself questioning whether the person she was becoming was worth the price of vengeance. The friendships she had cherished, the professional relationships she had nurtured, all strained under the pressure of her secret campaign. Even simple pleasures like weekend brunches or evening walks became tainted by the constant calculation of risks and opportunities. Despite these costs, Clara discovered reservoirs of strength she never knew existed. The fear that had paralyzed her on that fateful day in the boardroom transformed into a driving force that pushed her beyond perceived limits. She mastered the art of compartmentalization, learning to separate her personal emotions from strategic decisions. Each setback became a lesson, each obstacle a chance to refine her approach. The corporate world had taught her many things, but this experience was shaping her into something entirely new, a master strategist playing a game where the stakes were nothing less than truth and justice. As winter descended upon the city, Clara found herself standing before the mirrored walls of Coldwell Enterprises' lobby once again. This time, however, she wasn't clutching a termination letter. She carried a briefcase filled with evidence that would reshape the company's destiny. The security guards, who had once watched her humiliated exit, now nodded respectfully, unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. Above them, through the tinted windows of the executive floors, Marcus Coldwell moved between meetings, blissfully ignorant of the trap closing in around him. Clara's transformation from victim to victor had reached its critical phase. The board was scheduled to meet in exactly 48 hours to review the merger's final terms, and every piece of her carefully orchestrated plan was falling into place. Rachel had secured confidential testimony from several key executives willing to speak out against Marcus's misconduct. Michael's financial maneuvers had effectively blocked several of Marcus's emergency funding requests, leaving him vulnerable to shareholder pressure. Most significantly, David had arranged a private meeting with the largest institutional investors, armed with documentation that would make continued support for Marcus's leadership untenable. Yet as she prepared for the final confrontation, Clara faced a dilemma that transcended mere revenge. The merger itself, despite its tainted origins, represented a genuine opportunity to revolutionize their industry. Thousands of jobs depended on its successful completion, and abandoning it now would mean sacrificing years of hard work and innovation. The question loomed large: could she dismantle Marcus's empire without destroying the very deal she had fought so hard to protect? The answer lay in the delicate balance she had been maintaining between exposure and execution. Clara had become adept at wielding information like a scalpel, revealing just enough to destabilize Marcus's position while preserving the merger's integrity. She had identified allies among the board members who understood the importance of completing the deal on ethical terms. These individuals, once skeptical of her motives, now recognized her unique position to guide the transition without compromising the company's future. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, Clara acknowledged the profound irony of her situation. The skills she had honed under Marcus's tutelage, strategic thinking, crisis management, corporate diplomacy, were now being used to orchestrate his downfall. Yet beyond the personal victory lay a larger responsibility, to demonstrate that corporate success need not come at the expense of integrity. The coming days would determine not only her fate but also the future of an entire organization teetering on the brink of transformation. The boardroom doors opened once more, but this time Clara walked in with her head held high. Every eye turned to her as she entered, not as a disgraced former employee, but as the woman who had unraveled Marcus Coldwell's web of deceit. The air was thick with tension, yet there was an undercurrent of anticipation. Board members exchanged uneasy glances, their faces reflecting the shockwaves rippling through Coldwell Enterprises after weeks of carefully orchestrated revelations. Clara placed her briefcase on the polished mahogany table and opened it with deliberate calm. Inside were neatly organized folders, each containing irrefutable evidence of Marcus's misconduct, falsified financial reports, encrypted messages detailing his collusion with Sterling Corp., internal memos that exposed his systematic marginalization of dissenting voices, and documentation proving how he had manipulated the merger process for personal gain. She laid them out like pieces of a puzzle, connecting every thread of betrayal back to its source. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his usual smug demeanor replaced by thinly veiled panic. His eyes darted between the documents and the board members, searching for allies who might still stand by him. But none did. Even those who had once been loyal to him now avoided his gaze, their expressions ranging from disgust to disbelief. "Before we proceed," Clara began, her voice steady and commanding, "I want to make one thing clear. This isn't about revenge, or at least, not entirely." A murmur rippled through the room, but she pressed on. "This is about accountability. About ensuring that Coldwell Enterprises operates with integrity moving forward. And most importantly, it's about protecting the future of this company and everyone who depends on it." She turned to face the board directly. "The merger is sound. The strategy is solid. What isn't solid is the leadership that tried to hijack it for selfish purposes. If you choose to move forward without addressing these issues, you risk destroying everything we've worked so hard to build." For the next hour, Clara methodically presented her case. She highlighted how Marcus's actions had jeopardized not only the deal but also the trust of shareholders, employees, and partners. She shared testimonials from executives who had suffered under his toxic leadership. She revealed how his ties to Sterling Corp posed a direct threat to Coldwell's independence. And finally, she outlined a path forward, a plan to complete the merger while implementing reforms that would safeguard the company against similar abuses in the future. When she finished speaking, silence filled the room. Then, one by one, the board members began to nod. Some whispered among themselves, others scribbled notes furiously, but all seemed united in agreement. Marcus Coldwell could no longer lead this company. It was Rachel, the same Rachel who had stood by Clara during those darkest days, who broke the silence. "We need to vote," she said firmly. "Right now. On whether Marcus Coldwell remains CEO of this company." The motion passed unanimously. Marcus was stripped of his title, his influence, and his ability to manipulate the merger further. As security escorted him out of the building, Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it wasn't triumph she felt. It was closure. In the weeks that followed, the board appointed Clara as interim CEO pending a formal review. It was a role she hadn't sought, but one she accepted with determination. Under her leadership, the merger was completed successfully, preserving jobs and creating new opportunities across both companies. More importantly, she implemented sweeping changes, transparency initiatives, whistleblower protections, and programs designed to empower employees at every level. Clara didn't stop there. She reached out to David, Michael, Rachel, and others who had supported her during her fight. Together, they formed a coalition aimed at promoting ethical practices within the industry. Their mission was simple yet profound, to ensure that no one else would have to endure what she had gone through. One evening, months later, Clara found herself standing on the rooftop terrace of Coldwell Enterprises headquarters. The city lights stretched endlessly before her, a testament to resilience and renewal. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from David. "Congratulations, boss," it read. "You've changed the game." She smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Yes, she had lost much along the way, her innocence, her naivety, perhaps even a part of herself. But she had gained something far greater, purpose. And in doing so, she had proven that integrity could still triumph in a world often driven by greed. As she gazed out over the skyline, Clara realized that her journey wasn't just about exposing corporate betrayal or reclaiming her dignity. It was about showing others that even when the odds seem insurmountable, courage and conviction can rewrite the rules. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in happy endings, not just for herself, but for everyone who dared to dream of a better tomorrow.